Okay, let's check. Alles back, that's plank. Cool. Okay, so thank you for joining the Skill Mace Flow Introduction to Skill Mace Flow workshop. I am Coach Edouard. And today I'm basically just going to give you a little taste of what exactly Steel Mace Flow is as a movement practice. So just to start off, what is Steel Mace Flow? Well, Steel Mace Flow is a modern movement practice that integrates mind, body, and breath with ancient weapons of war, specifically the mace. It combines elements of hatha yoga, martial arts, circular strength training, mobility, calisthenics, animal locomotion, breath work, and meditation. The practice is designed to improve mobility, agility, flexibility, and strength, as well as emotional well-being. All techniques are learned by repetition and precision, with the focus on smooth transitions to help shift the body and into a full body and mental awareness, which is actually the complete goal of yoga, is the practice of awareness. So, that being said, that was a lot of complicated words. Basically, what Steel Mace Flow is, you can think of Steel Mace Flow as compared to kettlebell training in the sense that you have a hard style and you have a soft style. Hard style is very much focused on strength training, doing repetitions, and viewing the mace as an instrument to gain strength and power and just build muscle. Steel Mace Flow is almost like a moving meditation practice. It can also be viewed as a kind of interpretive dance, or even a supplement to a yoga practice to strengthen certain postures and asana. So I'm sure all of you have received the manual. Please read through the introduction. It gives you a brief history of where the mace came from, the historical origins, the mythological origins, and just how we use it as a modern tool. So I'm not going to focus on that for this workshop so much, but you have the information to basically read at your own leisure. So we'll talk briefly about breath work. I'm not going to focus on a lot of breath work in this workshop, but there are some breathing practices that you can do before and while you're practicing Steel Mace Flow, obviously being different forms of meditative breath, circular breathing, box breathing if you're doing more meditation. But the one we will focus on during practice is what they use in yoga called victorious breath, or Ujjayi breath. That's the name. So it kind of sounds like Darth Vader. So I'm just quickly going to show you what it sounds like or how you practice it. Don't worry about using it today, but as you start connecting your movements with your breath, try and focus on that, and that actually just helps you transition. It connects the breath to each movement. So basically what you want to do is you want to breathe in through the nose and then make a ha sound at the back of your throat. So it's like, right? Now, as you do that again, slowly close your mouth. So it turns into a nostril sound, but you still have that breathy ha sound at the back of your throat. So it sounds like this. So some people also call it Darth Vader breath. So it's, and you would obviously use that when you're, for instance, extending the mace away from the body, pushing and pulling for certain postures. So any movement where you're like, just to connect the breath. That's all I'm really gonna say on breath work right now. Obviously, if you have classes with me, I do highlight the breath work a lot more while practicing the mace, but it's more important just to get the different positions and the movements down, and then you start adding the breath to make it a full body experience. All right, so let's move on to the first section. This section falls under the title Structures of Strength. Under structures of strength, we have 6 positions. Yeah, sorry. And this makes up the basis for steel mace flow in terms of what we call the 4-step flow. So what they are is you have your standing position, or in yoga, we also call it mountain pose. We have our step 1, which is a forward lunge, our step 2, which is a lateral lunge, step 3, which is a reverse lunge, and then step 4, which is a cross-body step, or a dragon lunge, or even called a curtsy squat, depending on what your familiarity is with your own movement practice. So I'll demonstrate the first position, mountain pose, because mountain pose is the mother of all positions. It is a position that you return to at any point during your practice if you don't know where you're going, and you just recenter yourself. So how to do this, right? You kind of almost rotate your feet slightly. Blooper. Okay, let's do that again. So point your big toes forward. So it almost feels like a little bit of slight internal rotation. Then moving up. Ankles are soft, knees soft. You want to be loose here. Then pelvis slightly tucked underneath. Activate the glutes, right? This also has the secondary effect of wanting to activate your calves, which is a good thing. Okay, so pelvis tucked. Now, you want to stand up straight and almost feel as if there's a string pulling your head up and back, right? Let me demonstrate from the side. Okay, so pelvis tucked, and as if something's pulling you up from here. Okay, core is tight, right? Hands next to your thigh. Shoulders roll back and down, which activates the lats. Okay, so from the front, like so. This is your basic starting position, which is your standing structure or mountain pose. That will be your first position. We will take all the other positions from this position. All right. The second position that we're going to talk about is the step 1, or the forward lunge. So from your standing structure. And actually, if you want to practice getting into standing structure, I highly recommend this little drill. So what you would do is you would do a bunch of high knees and then stop and get into standing structure, and then high knees and then practice getting into standing structure or mountain pose. Okay, so second position, get into standing structure. Now we are going to surge forward in a lunge. You step forward, right? From here, you bring the knee down. I can actually go a little bit further. Now, from this position, you want to drive the hip forward. That helps you stay upright. You also want to have the sensation of pulling your heel backwards and your toe forwards. What that does is it activates the quads and creates stability in the position, like this. You can do anything with your hands. You can keep your hands here. You can keep your hands here. And think about crushing the ground between your feet, which switches these on. When you step back to standing structure, you rip the ground away that way. Back. That's it. So there's always ripping and tearing in every position. We can talk about anti-rotation when we start using the mace a lot more, but we also use anti-rotation when we take on these different stepping patterns. So just to review that again, I'm going to go 45 degrees so you can see. Okay, so I get into my standing structure. I step forward. Now, be careful of doing this. So I'm on this line so you can see it. A lot of people, when they step forward with lunge, they step very narrowly. and then they don't have a lot of stability. Think of your legs as two train tracks. You can't cross the track. So when you lunge forward, you get into your standing structure, pelvis slightly tucked, core tight, you step forward, you go down. Watch out for knee cave and tight, upright. Rip the ground away and you're back. That is step one, our forward lunge. Step two, the lateral lunge. From the same position, standing structure, we're going to step out to one of the sides, hence moving laterally. Now, I've seen a lot of classes where people would step and they don't give themselves a lot of space. But before I say that, things I want you to be aware of, your feet. When stepping out, step out as far as you can. Turn your foot that's stepping out about 45 degrees and do the same with the other foot. This creates space in the hips so that you can actually go a lot deeper. So, we're going to step out, lateral lunge. Give yourself a lot of space and then think deeply. Think about step one where we're pushing the hips forward and that keeps you upright. Like that. Now, if you don't want to step and step, because that does tire you out quite a lot, from here to practice your lateral lunges, you can also just do this. Just move and shift your weight from side to side. Because you've created space by opening your feet, you can actually move quite comfortably from side to side. That's it. Okay, so that's our position two. When we practice the full flow, there's going to be many instances where we're going to go forward lunge, lateral lunge. That already is the beginning of flowing. Okay, let's talk about step three. Step three is the reverse lunge. Now it works on the same principle as the forward lunge. There's only a few things to keep in mind when doing a reverse lunge. So, reverse lunge. The biggest problem is when people do a reverse lunge, they tend to do this. They bend forward and they reach and then kind of come up. That's okay, but you have to trust that the ground is going to catch you. So, what we want to see when we're flowing in steel-man flow is it looks a lot more confident when you just step back. So, same as the forward lunge, the same idea applies. You're ripping or crushing the ground, and then ripping the ground away as you step forward. I didn't mention this with the lateral lunge, but the same thing applies with the lateral lunge. When you're here, you're crushing the ground between your legs to activate the legs. Let me just give you one more kind of cue. Think of your knee pointing upward. Now, it won't actually point upward, but it is just to give you enough external rotation so you have that space in the hip to move, right? As you get to your position, you crush the ground, and now this leg is going to rip the ground that way as we step back. That's it. All right. So we covered the forward lunge, the lateral lunge, the reverse lunge. This one, I refer to it as a dragon lunge just because it sounds cooler. And how that works is it's a lateral position, but we are stepping from our standing structure, picking up our leg and stepping like this. Now, it is okay if you are here. That is fine. It is okay if you are here. That is fine. It is also okay if you are here. It all depends on the way you want to express the movement, but also where you are in your movement practice and what space you have in your body. So, the same thing applies there. When stepping, you want your heel to point in the direction that you are stepping. So if I show you from this side, as I'm stepping, my heel is pointing towards the camera. Right. So step 4, get into your standing structure, soft knees, pelvis tucked, core tight, shoulders rolled back, head up. I like to use my arms because it just kind of feels nicer. Right? Like I said, if you don't have the range of motion or if you're not comfortable with the step, practice on going deeper. But for right now, this is fine. This is fine. But this is where you want to work towards. Okay. So in terms of structures of strength, those are the 4 main stepping patterns. There's only one other position, and we call it step 0. The reason why we use step 0 is mainly to give us an opportunity to change direction, and that will become clearer once we add the mace. But what step 0 is in terms of the 4-step flow, or the 0 to 4-step flow, is a basic squat position. So you basically go a little bit wider than shoulder width, feet pointing slightly outward, drive the knees out as you descend, try and stay upright. Now, a lot of people don't have the range of motion to do this, so I will give you a regression that you can practice. But basically, you sit down and up. Key notes with the squat. The idea is to sit back, don't just go like this. The other biggest problem that I see that people have with the squat is that they lead with their hips. And they try and do this and they wonder why they're stuck. The idea is to think about sitting back, using your arms as a counterweight and descending. That's it. Now, if you have limited range of motion and you can't get into a deep squat, I recommend using a weight. Here I have a kettlebell. And what I can do basically is as I descend, I can use this kettlebell to counteract that feeling of falling backwards. And then just sit here in this position for a while to create space. That's it. So, we're going to practice our first little flow. We're going to run through all the positions for 1 minute. Let me demonstrate what it looks like. So we're going to start in starting strength. Structural strength. We're going to start in mountain pose. We perform a forward lunge. Then lateral lunge. Back to mountain, reverse lunge, and then dragon lunge. From here, we change legs, forward lunge, lateral lunge, reverse lunge, and dragon lunge. That is the whole flow. So let's do that for a minute. Here we go. Think of those cues. Drive the hips forward, stay upright. Sorry, I got lost. Oops, balance. Last round. Reverse and end on dragon lunge. That's it. Okay, so when we're practicing steel mace flow, those 4 steps plus doing squats are the basis of doing your flow practice. Now I'll give you some modifications. This is a little bit more advanced, but it makes the practice very interesting. So first we're going to talk about pivots. Because sometimes you're swinging the mace and you might have an obstruction or you don't know where to go with your flow, especially if you're free flowing. So as Leo says, when in doubt, pivot out. So basically what that means is your step 3 and step 1, they are going to turn into step 2s, and your step 2 is going to turn into a step 1 or a step 3, and your step 4, we're going to do a 180 turn. What that looks like. So pivots, all your lunges. We perform a forward lunge, right? Let me do it this way. Okay, so I step forward, and from here, pivot out. So I turn, and I coil back, and back. Other side, here, turn out, pivot, and back. Right. So, let me show from this side again. I step forward, I pivot, uncoil, and back. Other leg, here, 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 and back. So anytime you're in a step 1, a forward lunge or a reverse lunge, you can use a pivot to change direction. The next one, step 2. When we are performing a lateral lunge, here. From here, like you saw with the other pivot, you can pivot to a step 1, right? But you can also see this as a step 3, so you can go back or you can go forward, right? So, other side, I step out, right? Feet 45 degrees, create that space. From here, pivot into a lunge, and back, rip the ground away, and I'm back in my standing structure. That's the first movement modification that we can try whenever we're flowing to help us change direction. So, because sometimes we're going to be stepping in a direction, there might be a door or something. So it's a way for us to, well, you can also use it for expression, but to avoid obstacles as well. The next modification we're going to talk about is tall stance. Tall stance, basically what that is for the yogis in the house. It's tree pose. So, how do you do this? You get into your standing structure, right? Then you slightly shift your weight onto one leg as you raise your leg. Now you can have your knee forward, or you can externally rotate your knee, depending on what you want to do. Now in Budokan, they want you to demi-point your feet. You can also flex your foot down, depending on what feels best for your body. So here, this would be tree pose, right? Or tall stance in steel mace flow. Here, right. Why do we use this? In tall stance is mainly used to slow down the flow. Because you're taking that moment to actually rise up higher from your base, it actually creates a time distortion in the sense. Look at the difference when I step forward, and I step back. That's the speed. So I step forward and I step back. But if I go forward, tall stance, that slows it down. So for instance, let's say I'm going from a step 1 to a step 2. Okay? So that would be step 1, tall stance, step 2. it gives me a little bit of a pause. That's it. So I'm going to do it with the other leg now. Step 1, tall stance. Step 2, tall stance. Step 1, tall stance. Step 2. That's quite hard. So if you need a little break, just take about 2 minutes just to get some breath. We also use the tall stance in one of the masterclass flows called the Tree King flow. We'll not be covering the Tree King flow today, but think about using these pivots and tall stance to modify your basic stepping patterns in a way that it makes it look more interesting, more powerful, and dynamic. The last one we will learn today, in terms of movement modifications, is short stance. Now, what is short stance? Well, first of all, it's the opposite of tall stance. So when you are in your lunge or squat or anything, so let's go from squat. We're here. Imagine you have a ceiling here. So any movement that you do, you don't necessarily return to your standing structure or mountain pose, you stay low. Now, this is very challenging for people who haven't done a lot of leg work. I particularly find this very challenging, but it's really good to do. The best case of that is when you do the 4-step flow and you stay low. It looks like this. So you forward lunge, staying low, lateral lunge, reverse lunge, dragon lunge. Staying low, now I'm in mountain. All right. Step 1, stay low. You see. So we went through our 6 positions: mountain, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and the squat. We talked about pivots and tall stance and short stance. At this point, does anybody have any questions before we move on to basic Mace positions?
I actually have a question.
Okay.
Dragon stance.
Yes.
Right. The anchor leg. Right. So obviously not the one that you are bending, right? Yeah.
Yes.
What needs to happen with him? What sensation do I need to feel? Like yeah.
Okay.
Just a little bit more on the anchor leg, please.
No problem. So as you step back, like I said, all these positions are fine. You almost want to have the sensation of squeezing the thighs together. So again, I haven't covered anti-rotation as much. We'll cover that more when we do the actual Mace work, but in every position, there's a sensation of crushing and ripping. In this case, the dragon lunge, step back, right? Now, the sensation of crushing comes from crushing your thighs together, and that gives you more stability in the pose or position. Can you feel that?
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, that's great.
Okay, cool. Everybody good? All right. Let's move on. Okay. So right here, I should probably mention the mechanics of Mace training. This is in your manual. Some of the things that we're going to talk about is grip confirmation. What that basically means is you will at all times when you hold the mace, you will have all 5 fingers around the mace. Second topic is elbow lock. Basically what that means is most of the time you want to glue your elbow to your side. There's the sensation of kind of crushing yourself between your elbows to activate the lats, right? The next one is shoulder pack. Shoulder pack means rolling your shoulder and depressing it down. So when holding the mace, you've got the squeezing sensation from here, rolling the lat down creates tightness. Crown to coccyx alignment, we've already kind of covered this in the mountain pose, but what that means is from your coccyx to your crown should be a straight line. That's why think of the sensation of somebody pulling your head by a string, pushing your head back, standing upright. Right? Then, more important for when we actually practice ballistic movements like swings, you are going to use some leg drive and you are going to use hips quite a lot when swinging. Then also, in terms of the weight balance, you always want to think of the balance being over the midfoot. So not shifted towards the front too much or to the back. Then now we're going to talk about anti-rotation. So anti-rotation could be anything. We also call it like isometric contractions, if you're thinking of muscle movements. So it's any time when you are having a muscle contraction where the muscle is not elongating or shortening. So it's basically just pure tension. So either ripping or crushing. So some of the versions of anti-rotation that we will be speaking about is rip. It's pulling the mace apart. It engages the posterior chain and it's used for any kind of pull motion. There's crush. It's pushing the mace together. It engages the anterior chain, which is the front line, and it's used for pushing motions. Then you can also think of bending in. So you can take the mace and bend in like this to create anti-rotation. And you can also use bending out as if you're trying to snap the mace as a form of anti-rotation. And the last one is ring. So if you think of a dishcloth, that sensation with the mace. All to create isometric muscle contractions and tension. Right, let's talk briefly about the anatomy of the mace. If you see the mace here, mace consists of two main parts. Namely the globe, as we refer to this. Some people have called it the head, the globe, well, the circle or whatever. So when I refer to the globe, I mean that part, and then the second part is the handle. Now the handle can also be split up into the grip and the mid grip. Yeah. Then we can talk about the mace being a leverage tool, which means obviously that it's offset in terms of the weight distribution. What that obviously does is by holding the mace in certain positions, especially like positions like this, it actually creates quite a lot of torque on your joints. So you have to be careful with that, but you can also use that to your advantage. Then some other concepts in terms of using a leverage tool is what is a lever, what is leverage, and what is a fulcrum. That's more applicable when you're actually swinging the mace because that's going to be a more ballistic pattern, but it's just good to be aware of these things before you start your mace training. All right. So let's talk about basic mace positions. Yeah. Cool. Now, if I can give you guys the exercise to visualize. If we are standing in our standing structure, think of there being a grid around your body. Now, where the positions on this grid is it's basically two positions here at the bottom, two positions here, two positions here, and two positions here. And I'll show you why. Besides that, we have 4 positions at the back and 4 positions at the back. So there is 12 total positions that the globe can be in, at least for steel mace flow level 1. It gets a little bit more tricky as you progress from here. So we will also talk about some grip names. When I give you a cue and I say hold the mace in a under-over grip, I'm always cueing the globe hand first and then the grip hand. So if I say under-over grip, what that means is the hand by the globe is under in a supinated position and the other hand is over in a pronated position. Okay? The basic first position that we are going to talk about is horizontal bottom. In steelmace flow, they also refer to this as landmark 1, right? I don't like using the term landmark 1 that much because when you're talking about landmark 1 and step 1, it gets a little bit confusing. So just follow me here. It makes sense, right? So when I say horizontal bottom, what that means is the mace is in a horizontal position in our bottom position, in an under-over grip, right? From here, second position is horizontal mid position. Now, just to get back to the mace mechanics, when you bring your mace to the second position, you can hold your mace like this, but it makes it very hard to get that elbow lock that we were talking about. So find a position where you can roll the shoulders back and lock in the elbows so you can be tight. Bring the mace roundabout to your sternum, pull it, and as you are pulling the mace towards you, you want to be crushing the mace. So this is quite a very tense position. Now, as you push the mace down, you're going to crush it. And as you land in this horizontal bottom position, you rip it apart. And then crush it as you pull it. And then rip it apart as you land. Right. That is how we apply anti-rotation moving from the different positions. But let's first just cover all the other positions. So we have horizontal bottom, right? Horizontal mid, under over grip. Then this would be horizontal top. Now this feels a little bit wonky, so I would recommend going in a over grip, right? This would be an over grip. Now, important thing with over grip is don't flex your palm this way. That creates a lot of weakness. Think of when you are arm wrestling. If somebody has your hand like this, you're going to lose. So stack the joint, keep it here, and crush the mace. That's it. From here, when you press overhead, right, rip the mace apart and crush, and this will be your horizontal top position. So just to recap, horizontal bottom, horizontal mid, horizontal top, sorry, horizontal overhead. Let me just confirm that. Horizontal bottom, horizontal mid, horizontal top, horizontal overhead. Right. Any of those vertical positions we can also do as rotated positions. So, I'm not going to go in very big depth in terms of forward and back positions because it kind of makes sense right now. But if I was saying back, I actually mean that the mace globe is facing back. So I always cue from the mace globe perspective. But to get into horizontal positions, right? We're going to start in our horizontal bottom. I'm going to face this way so you can see. Horizontal bottom position. Now remember your standing structure. Toes pointing forward, pelvis slightly tucked, tight core. We're in our standing structure or mountain pose. From here, we rotate up. The biggest part here is that you try and create an equal window between the front of the mace. You don't want this, because you see a lot of people do this. You don't want that. You want to be in between. If that's too wide, rather lower the grip here and make it a narrower window, but you want to be in between the window of the glove and the handle. Right. So your rotated position. This is a rotated horizontal bottom. Makes sense. From here, that this would make this rotated horizontal mid, rotated horizontal top, rotated horizontal overhead. The biggest thing with the rotated position is, and I even made that same mistake now because I wasn't thinking, as you pull the mace this way, we have a tendency to drop our hip. What you want to do is push the hip forward to remain like this and create that tension in your spine by twisting. So, horizontal bottom, counter rotate with the hip, and that's horizontal position. Right? This is a very hard position. Then top and overhead. Let me show the other side. Horizontal bottom. Right? From here, horizontal mid. Remember to drive the hip forward because we have a tendency to drop it back. You can flex the elbow here because it's very hard to get into this position otherwise. Horizontal mid, horizontal top, and horizontal overhead. Right. Those are the basic horizontal positions. In terms of vertical positions, this one I call flag. It's called different things in many practices. This one I call flag position. Right? This is going to be your main position when you are in a mountain pose or standing structure, right? Like this. And from here, there are many other vertical positions. For instance, you can take the mace like this, which is in effect an under-over grip, but because it's vertical, we call this one a guard position. And if you flip your hand around, it becomes a reverse guard position. Let me just give you a little idea. All the steel mace movements are kind of based on combat movements. So why would we do a reverse guard or a guard position? Well, if somebody was trying to strike your head, you would use either a horizontal top to block, or if somebody's striking from the side, you would use a horizontal reverse guard or a horizontal guard to stop the strike. That's it. So I've covered some vertical positions. Okay, one more chapter. Cross-body positions. Now, there are many more horizontal positions, but they're not applicable for what we're going to be doing in the flow. I obviously teach them when we go through the classes, but for today's flow lesson, not important at all. There are many horizontal positions that you can hold the mace in, like the mid grip, extended flags, you know, torch positions, but we will not cover that today. The other position that's very important is cross-body positions, especially if we are doing rotated positions. They are very much related. So a cross-body position is start in your horizontal mid. Now press the mace down while pulling the mace up and here. So you want this to be like your seat belt. It has to be close to your body or touching your body. We call this position cross-body top. Why cross-body top? Because we are cueing from the position of the globe. When we now think of your anti-rotation, you're going to pull with this hand, you're going to push with this hand, but crush the mace as you move slowly down. You can almost do the the ring, like ring the mace in between your fingers as you bring it down, and this is your cross-body bottom position. Cross-body top, cross-body bottom, right? Cross-body bottom, cross-body top. Got it. So just to review, vertical positions, main one we will be using is flag. The reason why we use this one is for 360s. We will not be covering 360s today, but you can do many flows where you do stepping patterns with the mace like this and focus on balance and control. Horizontal positions, this is going to be our bread and butter. This is going to be the main focus of today's flows. So try and memorize your horizontal bottom, horizontal mid, horizontal top, horizontal overhead, right? and also in the rotated positions. Okay. After vertical, horizontal, rotated, and then the last one, just reviewing crossbody top, crossbody bottom. That's it for Mace positions for this workshop. Do I have any questions? Yes, no?
No, that was good, man. That was good. That was good. Thanks. No.
No questions on the Mace positions? All good. Okay, cool. Let's move on. So now that we've learned the Mace positions, how do we move the Mace around the body in a good way, or in a aesthetically pleasing way, but also in a functional way? All right. The main two movements we will be talking about today is the ballistic curl and the long stab. Why are we talking about these two positions? Well, the ballistic curl is the main transition we use when we move from horizontal positions to other horizontal positions. The long stab we use in any case when we are in a rotated position. Now, I will, at the end of this workshop, I will show you where the rotated positions are used the most. But for right now, let's just build up the movements and then see how it goes from there. Right now, the transitions, ballistic roll. So pick up your mace in a, as they say, spine intelligent way. Roll your shoulders back, get into your standing structure. Let me give you guys just a little bit of an anecdote. So something that I recently learned, I used to hold the mace like this. And that feels solid because I can press and I've got power. But my own coach told me I'm bring the shoulder in because I don't have that elbow lock. Now this feels weak and I'm putting a lot of torque on my wrist. So to combat that is you bring the handle in, right? Okay. And why do we do this? What is the application? And he told me, well, if you were going to strike someone with a stick, how would you do that? You would do that. You would do that. So to generate your rotational power is you would crush from here and do that. So that is why I'm bringing my arm in and creating that stability in my joints by rolling the shoulder and locking my elbows to my side in the horizontal mid position. Also think about, for the guys who are in the gym, rowing the mace back. It is basically a row position. You've got a little bit of tension in your scapula as well. So from this position, there are 3 steps to performing a ballistic roll. The first is this hand is going to slowly release as this hand starts to make a circular arc. So you're going to move through a crossbody position to the mace being in front of your face, right? From this position, you slide the hand up. Hi, Salim. Welcome. Okay, cool. I'm going to go on. Right, from here, you slide the hand up. With the mace, hi, are you here? Okay, cool. Can you just mute your mic? I'm already kind of halfway through the workshop, but you're welcome to follow along. And after this section, I will ask them, give you an opportunity to ask some questions. Cool. So let's revisit the ballistic roll. So standing structure, roll the shoulders back, tuck the pelvis, tight core, right? From here, as we position the mace up above our face, in front of our face, we slide the hand up, and we come to a prayer position. This is the midway point, and you want to focus on connecting your hands. Now, I'll show you a very ugly ballistic roll, but I'll check the chat now, thanks. All right, from here, you slide the other hand down. When you land, you crush the mace, bring the elbow lock in, roll the shoulders back, and you're back in your horizontal mid 2 position. Right. What that looks like is, in practice, as you become more comfortable with the ballistic curl, it looks like this. So, from here, move through crossbody bottom, crossbody top, prayer in front of your face, crossbody top to the other side, horizontal mid, slide the mace down, or the hand down, and crush as you land. And it's a position. Actually, you might mute your mic, please. Okay, wait, I got it. Cool, thanks. All right. The second transition we will be looking at is the long stab. This is a very easy one to do. So we're going to be in an over grip in our rotated horizontal bottom position. From here, all you do is stab forward like a sword, hands connect, and you pull the mace back into the other side. So it looks like this. Now remember, when you get to this position, remember to create that tension by pressing the mace down and crushing. Also, counter rotation with the hip. You don't want the hip to drop back. You want to look forward. Right. Those are going to be the two transitions that we will use for today's workshop. Any questions?
Yes, I got a question. How important with the ballistic curl, right? When you're transitioning from, the globe from left to right, how important is it you mentioned the prayer stance, like the hands need to meet. How important is that? Or if you get into the flow of it, is it fine if you just, let your hands slide down the mace handle? How important is that for it to reach each other, or is that just like a guideline?
It's important in terms of your practice, because when we start practicing steel mace flow, what happens is a lot of people just want to do this, and that's just speed. That's not technique. So to actually practice it, that looks a lot different, because when I am actually rotating the mace, I am thinking about the different landmarks. So sometimes I'm going to flow very slowly. And when I do that, I want that to be impactful. So to give you a demonstration what that would look like is, if I'm practicing my ballistic rolls and I'm not trying to go fast, I do this. And this is how I show that I've got control over the mace, is I do this. Right? Crossbody top, prayer, crossbody top, horizontal mid. Crossbody top, prayer, crossbody top, horizontal mid. If I keep thinking about the landmarks, that's going to give me a better visual guide to where my curl is actually going to happen. Because if I'm just thinking about not going through that, I'm just going to be throwing with this. And it's just going to be this. But if I think about the ballistic roll and I do it through all those landmarks, it looks like this. I don't know if that really answers your question, but I think you're slowing down the technique. And when you slow down the technique, you learn the control. And once you learn control, you gain strength. And when you gain strength, you gain precision and elegance, really, in the movement. So it looks a lot nicer, instead of people just throwing the mace around, which doesn't look like they've got control over the mace. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. Perfect. Thanks, man.
Okay, cool. Okay. So now we are moving into the part where we've talked about the structure of strength, the 5 stepping patterns, plus our standing mountain pose. We talked about pivots, tall stance, short stance, and then we've covered vertical positions, horizontal positions, rotated positions, cross-body positions, and now the ballistic crawl and stab. And you can see in the ballistic crawl how that builds on the Mace position, because we talked about the cross-body, the vertical, which is now a prayer hand, then cross-body, and then a horizontal position. For today's flows, horizontal mid is going to be your main landmark. So even though I showed you all the positions, they're not very important for today. Most of our landmarks are going to be in this position. So focus on that. Remember when you are in this position to crush the mace. And then when you do the ballistic crawl, you kind of let go of tension. And once you land in the landmark, you crush the mace again. Because that just creates tension. It actually creates stability in the body. And if you do the same with the legs, you basically become like a statue. You are solid and you are grounded. All right, we're going to talk about our first Mace movement. We will now be combining a ballistic crawl with a forward lunge. Now, if you guys can remember the forward lunge, right, from here, we will hold the mace in horizontal 2, get into our standing structure, toes pointing forward. You're going to perform a ballistic crawl very slowly here. Now, the general rule with steel mace flow, there is no absolute rule, but the general rule in steel mace flow is you always step with the leg, or you always have the bent leg be the globe leg. So when I step forward now, my forward lunge, it is going to be the weighted leg. From here, be careful not to go forward, push your hips forward, sink lower, row the mace back, lock the shoulders, press the shoulders down, and crush the mace from here. Now, this is quite a lot of tension on the body, and it's important to breathe here. From here, rip the ground away as you, well, you don't have to do the ballistic crawl there. So what we're going to do is ballistic crawl, forward lunge, step back. 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 You guys got that? Cool. Alrighty. Second one. Now we just go through all the steps. The second one is the lateral lunge. So from here, the general rule when we do the lateral lunge is we step away from the globe. So what that looks like is ballistic crawl, step. Important parts here. Okay, we're not going to do a cross-body position. We're keeping it in horizontal mid. So the mace is going to be here. That's what it looks like. Let me just back up a bit so you can see. From here. Now here, I'm not actually creating enough space, so I can actually step wider and get really deep into my lateral lunge. And I can even see my hand there, bringing the elbow back in, lifting up. So I'm seeing myself on the camera and correcting my own form. That's it. Okay. So ballistic crawl forward lunge, ballistic crawl lateral lunge. Now it's kind of strange doing the reverse lunge because you still want the bent knee to be the weighted leg. So how do we do that? We step with the opposite leg. What that looks like is ballistic crawl, opposite leg. Right? Step forward, ballistic roll. Ooh, almost made that mistake. Reverse. Ballistic roll. Ooh, reverse. Okay, got it. So to recap, ballistic curl, forward lunge, you step with the weighted leg. Ballistic curl, lateral lunge, you step away from the globe. Ballistic curl, reverse lunge, you take the opposite leg of the globe. For ballistic curl and step forward, same rule kind of applies. You step away from the globe. Like that. In your horizontal mid position. Now from here, try and actually rotate out. I know it's hard. So, ballistic curl, cross body. Ballistic curl, cross. Ballistic curl, shoulder, elbow, bring that in. That's it. Now, it's probably fine if you do this. I'm not going to discourage people from using the full size of the mace, but it's good to learn that elbow lock. And I'm going to show you guys why now. Then, our step 0, which is our squat. Ballistic curl, squat. Ballistic curl, squat. Ballistic curl, squat. Ballistic curl, squat. Those are the 5 different steps. So you always return to your mountain pose, you do your ballistic roll, you transition, and then step. So recap. Ballistic roll step 1 or forward lunge, you step with the weighted leg. Ballistic roll step 2, you step away from the globe. Ballistic roll step 3, you step with the opposite non-weighted leg. And ballistic curl step 4 or the dragon lunge, you step away from the globe. These are general rules, but it's not an absolute rule. If you feel you want to do it the other way, that's also fine. Okay. Right. That means we've got enough things to work on now that we can actually start practicing the masterclass flows. So I will start teaching you guys the switch march flow and the 3-step flow now. Before I do that, do you guys have any further questions regarding the mace movement, doing ballistic rolls and stepping patterns?
Just a question. I noticed in all the movements you move the mace and then the body. Is that always the case, or does it, as you advance, does it move to moving the mace and the body at the same time?
Yes, you're 100% correct. You can move the mace and then step, especially when learning. There's a little bit of a disconnect. Like, it's hard for people to do everything at the same time. So I teach it as 2 different steps. As you become more comfortable, you can, let me do that right. You can do this. You see, but it's more important to first learn the different patterns and get used to it and then combine them. We've gone through the stepping patterns now by doing ballistic rolls and then the step, ballistic roll and then the step. What I am going to teach you now is in the flows, we are going to be doing them simultaneously on certain positions. Not all the positions. It makes a lot of sense to do the ballistic roll while stepping, especially if you are doing step 2 and step 4, because it looks really good. But it's not an absolute rule. Like, you don't have to first make the mace movement and then step. If you feel comfortable doing the transition while stepping, you're welcome to do that. So there's no absolute rule. It's just, especially people who haven't done steel mace flow, it's just to make it easier by just chunking the different parts. That good? Cool. Alrighty. So let's talk about the switch march flow. The switch march flow consists of three steps. Basically what it is when you do your steel mace flow certification, you usually start off by doing 500 360s. Directly from there, you move into the masterclass flow, which is a combination of 8 flows that you learn. Now, not everybody wants to get certified, not everybody wants to do that, but the masterclass flow is almost like a study of the whole curriculum. And I've even gone back to the masterclass flow and explored it as like a meditation practice to make it kind of play with it and try and make it harder by practicing different movements based on the structure. But for today, I'm just going to show you the basic structure, and it's going to be using all the movements that we've covered so far. So the switch march flow basically is ballistic curl forward lunge, ballistic curl reverse lunge, standing structure squat. Well, standing structure ballistic curl squat. That is one side. Because you're doing the squat, that allows the mace to change sides so that you can do the switch march on the other side. So for demonstration, I will show you the switch march flow quickly. Right. So as I said, you would probably come from the masterclass and you would be swinging 360, but you will get into your horizontal mid position. From the horizontal mid position, you ballistic curl, step forward. Now, take your time here. Find the spot. Check yourself. Check your alignment. Are you upright? Do you have anti-rotation? Are you crushing the mace? From here, as you step back, do the ballistic curl. Oops, that wasn't a very good one, but it happens. So from here, and then standing structure, squat. From here, ballistic curl forward lunge, ballistic curl reverse lunge, ballistic curl squat. That's the switch march flow. Okay. Let's do that for 1 minute. Right, you guys ready? Try and move the mace as you step back. Don't rush through the flow. Rather do it slowly. Find your balance in each position and then go from there. It's not how many reps you can do in 1 minute, but use that time because that's a lot of work on your legs. It's a lot of concentration. It's a lot of hard work. So we're going to start with 1 minute. We're going to do the switch march flow. I will do it very slowly so you can follow me. So here we go. In our horizontal mid position, ballistic curl, forward lunge. As we step back, you can also trace your leg back like this to find your balance. Ballistic curl, reverse lunge. Step forward, ballistic curl, squat. From here, ballistic curl, forward lunge. Now use this little hack I gave you. As you rip the ground back, ballistic curl, find your balance. Slide the leg back, reverse lunge. Step forward, ballistic curl, squat. That's it. Ballistic curl, forward lunge. Ballistic curl, reverse lunge. Ballistic curl, squat. Ballistic curl, forward lunge. Ballistic curl, reverse lunge. Ballistic curl, squat. How did you guys do?
Workout.
Yeah. 1 minute. You want to be working, especially for the masterclass flow, when you practice, you want to get that up to 5 minutes of constant flow. It's hard. Okay, we're going to take a little break. If you've got some water or something, take a sip. Okay. So you guys can see now, it basically takes into consideration everything that we've learned so far. You got your forward pattern, back step, and did you notice while we were doing the reverse lunge, we were doing the ballistic roll while doing the back step, but when we went back to standing structure or mountain, we waited until we squatted because you can't really do that. I mean, you could probably, if you could figure it out, but generally not. And again, that doesn't make it a rule. It's just not the way we teach it. Okay. The second flow that we're going to learn today is the 3-step flow. Now, we've stayed in this box. We've stayed basically in this sagittal plane, moving forward and back. So we move forward, we move back, and we move up and down. Now, the 3-step flow is the first time we start shifting the box. So we're going to start incorporating the lateral lunges and the dragon lunges. So what is the 3-step flow? The 3-step flow is a ballistic roll with a forward lunge. Now, this is up to the flow artist or the Mace artist's interpretation. You can use your tall stance or short stance if you want to do the flow faster or slower. Because we're going to move from a forward lunge to a lateral lunge. So you have the option, let me step back. When you do your forward lunge, you can go tall stance to lateral lunge, or you can go forward lunge, short stance. You have that option. From the lateral lunge, we move directly to the dragon lunge. So it is going to be ballistic roll forward lunge, ballistic roll lateral lunge, ballistic roll dragon lunge. Then we reset, other side. Ballistic roll forward lunge, ballistic roll lateral lunge, ballistic roll dragon lunge. What it looks like with the Mace. Right. So, horizontal mid, ballistic roll, forward lunge, ballistic roll, lateral lunge. Now, we'll probably use it in this position. You can go in a crossbody blind position. Ballistic roll, lateral lunge, ballistic roll, dragon lunge. Reset. Ballistic roll, forward lunge, ballistic roll, lateral lunge, ballistic roll, dragon lunge. I'll show it again on both sides. Horizontal mid, ballistic roll, forward lunge, ballistic roll, lateral lunge, ballistic roll, dragon lunge. I'm going to exaggerate the full stance now. So, horizontal mid, ballistic roll, forward lunge, ballistic roll, whoops, let's do that again. Ballistic roll, forward lunge, ballistic roll, lateral lunge, ballistic roll, dragon lunge. You see what I'm doing with the tall stance? Okay? I'm thinking in my head while I'm doing it. Now I'm just going to do it so you can see what it looks like. Okay, one more time. That's it. Any questions with the 3-step flow? Maxie? Lucky.
Ja, good. Dat is moeilijk.
Yeah.
Difficult.
Yeah. Woo, that gets the blood flowing. Woo, okay. We're going to take a small break. Now we're going to get into like a proper flow practice. Okay. Can you guys remember both those flows? Do you kind of know where we're going? Yes, no? So if I say switch march flow, do you know what it is?
We're going to combine them or what?
Yeah. Yeah. So the idea would be to do the switch march flow, both sides, and then do the three-step flow, both sides. And that would be considered one round of a flow. Now I will obviously guide you guys through it. I'm just checking if you can kind of remember. So the switch march flow is focused very much on stepping forward and reverse and squatting. The 3-step flow is focused on stepping forward, then stepping laterally, and then cross back. So you get all your different positions just from those 2 flows. Okay, let's see. If I put a, what's it, a minute and a half on the clock. So we're going to take it slow. I'm not going to cue that much, but I'll say some of the cues so you can just follow me along. All right, are you guys ready? Okay, here we go. Okay, ballistic roll, forward lunge, ballistic roll, reverse lunge, ballistic roll, squat, ballistic roll, forward lunge, ballistic roll, reverse lunge, ballistic roll, squat. Now, ballistic roll, forward lunge, ballistic roll, full stance, lateral lunge. Okay, I keep forgetting that. Right, lateral lunge, ballistic roll, dragon lunge, reset, ballistic roll, forward lunge, ballistic roll, lateral lunge, ballistic roll, dragon lunge. Back to the switch march. Ballistic roll, forward lunge, ballistic roll, reverse lunge, ballistic roll, squat, ballistic roll, forward lunge, ballistic roll, reverse lunge, ballistic roll, squat, ballistic roll, forward lunge, ballistic roll, lateral lunge, ballistic roll, dragon lunge. Last one, ballistic roll, forward lunge, ballistic roll, lateral lunge, ballistic roll, dragon lunge, and you're done. How was that?
Whew.
Woo. Okay, I definitely got to work out there. So for all intents and purposes, that is the bulk of what I'm going to teach in this workshop today. You have all the positions that you can do your stepping patterns. You've got a basic transition, and you can do a ballistic roll, and then have your mid landmark. I do want to talk about 2 advanced movements that we add to these flows to make it more interesting. If you are looking at these movements from more of an exercise perspective, if you want to design like a HIIT class or something about around them, we will be discussing 2 movements. One being arrows, or bow and arrows, or archers, as they're also referred to, and we will also look at uppercuts. The reason why I taught you the long stab is because uppercuts are related to all the rotated positions, while arrows are related to all the horizontal positions. Okay, so we're going to take a little bit of a step back from all the flow work. We built that up. We can take a little bit of a break. Okay, quickly, let's discuss the arrows. Very, 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 very cool position. I think it's one of the more punchy positions, especially if you're taking photos or if you are in a flow and you're doing a full stance and you've got a bow and arrow going as well. It looks powerful. And it's also, as my coach said, for him specifically, he calls it a power position. So if you find a position that you really like the feel or look of in your flow practice, remember that position and use that as a landmark when you don't know where you're going. When you went into like a little bit of a flow state and you were just free flowing and it felt good, and then suddenly you became conscious and you don't know where to go, or there's an obstruction, go to your power pose. If your power pose is standing in your dragon lunge, and this is where you find your center, then that's your power pose. If your power pose is being in a lateral lunge like this, find that position. Then from here, where can you go? You can pivot out, right? I actually realized I missed one of the pivots. Yeah, first time doing the workshop, and of course, you forget some of the stuff. One pivot I didn't teach you guys, a lacrosse back step. So we talked about step 2, pivoting, and if it's step 1, pivoting, right? I forgot to tell you guys about when you're doing the cross back step, we do a 180 turn, right? Then you can go 180 turn. So I know I'm just briefly throwing that one in, but again, if this is your power position and you don't know where to go, just pivot out and find another position, right? So definitely play with those flows, the stepping patterns, see where the Mace takes you, and explore. But let me give you 2 more movements, and then we will wrap it up for today. Okay. In terms of advanced Mace movement, let's talk about bow and arrows. So what we are going to do is we got our Mace in a horizontal mid position. Right. From here, take the globe hand and press it forward like this. Extend the hand forward. Actually, just get into a crossbody top position. Sorry. Crossbody top position. And then from here, press your hand forward. Like so. Crossbody top, forward. Right? From here, bring the Mace up as if you're kind of holding a bow and arrow. What you want to be feeling is this hand needs to be pulling the Mace away. This hand is going to be pulling the Mace back. That is tearing the Mace apart, which is your anti-rotation. So you're pushing the Mace, you're pulling the Mace, and you're here. From this position, rotate the Mace out. So to show you what it looks like, it's not under my neck, it's here, right? Now just feel how that feels in your bicep. If it hurts, don't do it. Find a position that's comfortable for you. So you can go like this, that is fine. You can also have it further away from you. The most important thing in steel Mace flow is creating a beautiful line. So if you find that this looks better for you, then do that. So just to teach the arrow, forward, up, rotate. You can also go straight from crossbody top to here. Then from here, ballistic curl, arrow, arrow. Okay, where can we use bow and arrows? Well, let's look at the switch march flow again. Anytime we're doing a forward lunge, or even any other lunge, you can use the arrow, where we would have had the mace in this position, right? Now you can extend the mace out. It's a lot more difficult. It's very challenging on your nervous system, but it's going to improve your balance and coordination a lot. Let me show you what it looks like. So, ballistic roll, forward lunge, extend, back to a horizontal minute, reset, ballistic roll, forward lunge, right? And remember all your cues from earlier. Drive the hips forward, crush the floor between your feet, rip the mace apart. It's a lot of tension. You're gonna get tired, so be careful. In the lateral lunge, you have two options with bow and arrows. For instance, you're going to be stepping away from the mace, right? One of the positions you can do is a power archer, which is ballistic roll like that. Or when you're stepping, you can also, for instance, instead of stepping, ballistic roll, shift away, ballistic roll, arrow, ballistic roll, arrow. Those are two of the positions that the arrow works really well. You can also do a back arrow, but that's a little bit more advanced and a little bit tricky to teach right now. The second, advanced mace movement. If you guys remember your horizontal bottom, rotated horizontal bottom position, here. And now remember, when we're transitioning, we can't use the ballistic roll here. Well, you can, but not now. From here, we're going to use the stab to transition the different positions. With an uppercut, what we are going to be looking for is obviously pressing the mace down, right? Remember to be in the middle of the mace window, right? You don't want this. You want the mace to be roughly in the middle, right? Arms extended, drive the hip forward, counter rotate. From here, bring the mace against your body in a crossbody bottom position, and then continue that rotation as you punch this arm up. There. Now in this position, same rule applies. You want your head to be roughly in the middle. So, against the body, down. Against the body, crossbody bottom, rotate. Always think of your landmarks, stop in your landmarks. Once you get comfortable with the landmarks, you can start doing it more fluidly. But always think about the landmarks as you are performing the movement. Right, once you've done a few reps on this side, use your long stab to switch sides. Same thing this side. Crossbody bottom, uppercut. Crossbody bottom, horizontal, rotated horizontal bottom, right? Crossbody bottom, uppercut, crossbody bottom, rotated horizontal bottom. Right. So where can you use uppercuts? Uppercuts are great movements when you are doing forward lunges as well. Doesn't mean you can't do them as lateral lunges. You're gonna have to figure out how that feels in your body. But for instance, uppercuts, generally, you're going to be stepping forward with the opposite leg. So, step forward. Think about drawing a sword here, and basically, crossbody bottom, rotate, uppercut. As you bring the legs back, step back. Switch. Step forward, uppercut, back, switch. Now I went a little bit fast there, so I didn't actually keep it close to my body. So step forward, seat belt, crossbody bottom, rotate, crossbody bottom, step back. Switch, step forward, uppercut, step back, switch, step forward, uppercut, switch. One more, step forward, uppercut. And that's basically it. So what you can experiment with is doing the switch march flow or doing a ballistic roll and a stepping pattern, and then trying to add these uppercuts or using your long staff as a transition, combining the arrows, the uppercuts with your stepping patterns. So that's going to be my homework. Any questions?
No, man, but that was it's a lot. Like it's a lot of mental work as well with the physical work.
Yeah.
So I think having a notepad or like a whiteboard there is obviously going to help a lot.
Yeah.
But that's part of the learning process. So yeah.
Absolutely. So the stuff that I talked about today, it covers more than I would cover in one class, but it's enough that you can feel what the whole scope of the practice is. Because if I taught a class and it was just the stepping patterns, then there's no mace work, and then people go, well, what is steel mace flow? Or if I just taught a class on transitions, because there's a lot of transitions, then people still don't get it. And if I teach classes, so I had to really cherry pick from the stepping patterns, some of the most important mace positions, transitions, and at least practice a flow so that you can see where it's going. I threw in the uppercuts and the arrows because I think if you're going to be searching steel mace flow on the internet, you're going to see a lot of them and then go, well, I didn't learn that. So I put them at the end because they're not important for right now. The most important thing is practicing the stepping patterns, practicing the ballistic rolls. When you get comfortable with those, you start adding in the arrows and the uppercuts. And if you want to make it a little bit more difficult, you do that. So that's basically it. You know, if anybody wants to learn a little bit more about steel mace flow, they can obviously contact me. I do give private lessons, and I will be doing workshops and courses in the future. Yeah, thank you very much for joining me. That was awesome. I am really sweaty now. I had a wonderful time. I hope you did as well. And I will make this video available for your review if you want to go through the lessons again. Also, you have access to the manual where my cueing is a little bit more detailed. You can basically work through the manual and just add the progressions. I think I've even added a little bit more on the hand transitions, the mace positions, and some of the stepping patterns just for review there as well. Yeah, is there any other comment or questions before I say goodbye? All good? Okay, cool. Thank you very much, guys. I really, really enjoyed that. And yeah, I'll chat to you guys soon.